Yeah. BEETV Productions, the Cultural Preservation Station. Tune in. Tune in. Hey, yo. Black education, cultural preservation. Tailor BEETV, but cause elevation. Tune into the station, we rockin' the whole nation. That's right, we rockin' the whole nation. Prep the new generation for mental activation. Tailor BEETV's the new sensation. Stop the hesitation and learn something new. My girl Taylor B's here to show and prove.
Saying, I don't believe this. I don't believe he died by accident before we had the audio. The audio simply confirms that there are additional questions that needs to be asked. It wasn't just one thing they said in the audio. They said Nolan repeatedly in the audio. They said check his chest in the audio. They said, is he dead in the audio? And also, notice this, Nancy. Did you notice that the operator also said, is anybody breathing? Who says that? What operator says, who all is breathing on the boat? So is this all the audio, Nancy? Is there more audio? That's my question.
I want to look specifically, Teslin, at what was said. At one point, we think, you killed him? He's already dead. He's already dead. Is he dead? Yeah. Nolan, OMG, wake up. And as Janetta stated, then she hears a completely different name, Bart. Now, we also hear, and I'm very curious, the phrase, no. Teslin Figaro, was that a nickname of Nolan Wells?
I cannot confirm if that's a nickname of his or not. But what I do know is we heard Nolan. What I do know is we heard check his chest. What I do know is that we said, is he dead? What we do know is we heard screams. There's folks out there suggesting that perhaps they were talking to a seagull or perhaps talking to some random bird that was flying around that's called no. There were folks out there that suggested, well, maybe they were talking about the boat. Come on, we got to knock this off, Nancy. We heard what we heard. And so we were to put this before a jury.
Also, we hear, damn it, Bart, no-no's really dead. Damn it, Bart, no-no's really dead. Repeating it over and over and over. According to reports, his nickname, one of them, is no.
And again, I go back to this tape. I will not sit up here and pretend that I did not hear what was on that tape. And I ask again, even the operator said, who is breathing on the boat? Don't you think that's strange, Nancy? Who's breathing on the boat? Yes, when I
first heard that, Tesla, I thought, I've never heard a dispatch say, who's breathing? What? Did she hear all that in the background and do nothing? Or did she hear it and say something and release it? We don't know, man. We got to paper everybody with subpoenas to get to the bottom of this.
Peace, love, justice, and accountability. Welcome back to Black Education Empowers True Vision. This is BEETV, and you're tuned into Justice on Earth. This is the show where we keep the record by applying the 7D cultural ascension principles to all 11 areas of activity as it pertains to the Black community. So, of course, this week, our main story is Nolan Wells. The autopsy report is back, but it is not being released. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about, of course, our reparations watch. And then we're going to be given a Black business update. So I have some exciting things to talk about with that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I am going to bring up right now is the Nolan Wells case. First of all, I want to react to the video we just saw. Who is Bart? I don't know which one of the friends is Bart, but that's not one of the names that I've been hearing, like with the witnesses. It's been a guy named Warren. Really, Warren is the only name that I've heard. I don't know who Bart is, but Bart must have something important to do with what was going on with Nolan. And maybe Bart is the one that did this to him. You know, maybe that's who Bart is. So we just don't know. So we don't want to speculate, of course. But we do need to figure out what's going on with Nolan. So what I'm going to do real quick, let me get this screen shared, and then we're going to get into this timeline. So we're not going to go through the full timeline because we've already talked about this timeline before plenty of times. So we all kind of know where we are on the timeline, but this is where we left off on the timeline, the autopsy path. The incident with Nolan Wells happened on July 4th, where he was unalived after a trip to Horn Island. And July 6th is when the body was recovered. July 7th, Mississippi State Medical Examiner did do the autopsy. Her name is Stacy Turner. I don't have much faith in her. She has done a lot of other autopsies on Black Americans, and she has basically named all of these deaths undetermined or by accident. So I'm not very confident that she's going to do anything different here. But of course, we don't have that yet. It still has not been released. The private autopsy was done July 22nd, which is almost a whole month later. And the cause and manner were undetermined because the private autopsier, the pathologist, didn't get the neck, the throat, or the lungs. So they were not able to really do a full autopsy. So I'm not sure how the private one will turn anything up without that evidence. July 30th, the state's official autopsy was completed, but the results are not being released to the public and they're not being provided to the family. And then August 1st, the Mississippi officials are warning that there is a toxicology report that's circulating that is fake. And they want people to not pay attention to that report because the real state report isn't out yet. Now, the next step in this investigation is for them to really keep investigating, which I don't really feel confident about this investigation. Because it's already been a month and they have not produced one shred of evidence. They haven't produced one story. They haven't produced one report. Nothing. 30 whole days and nothing from the official investigators. That's not good news. That means that they're covering it up, right? We already know that it's a cover up. We can already feel that energy. But I want to get the family prepared for this because they're going to come out soon and tell you that no one's being charged in this case. They're going to come out soon and tell you that no one is being charged in this case, that this was an accidental case. So I want you to get ready for that because that is what's coming down the pike. They are not going to charge these boys in this murder. So I want us to really get prepared for that and really get ourselves in a space where, we are ready to hear that. I think a lot of us are already ready to hear that because we already see how they're dragging their feet with the investigation. And the one thing that I will point out, let me point this lady out because this lady really irritated me bad. So this lady is one of the, she's the Attorney General. Her name is Lynn Fitch. Let me share. Let me just share that. So this is the Attorney General. Her name is Lynn Fitch, and she states that anyone who threatens law enforcement officers involved in the Nolan Wells investigation will be held accountable. Now, they've already arrested 3 people in conjunction with this. They've arrested 3 people in conjunction with the people supposedly harassing the witnesses and or law enforcement in the case. To me, that's the only investigation I see them doing. The only investigation that I can see them actively doing is looking at the people who are like tired of this shit and they're like complaining. They're complaining or they could be harassing them, and I don't condone that. I'm not saying that we should be going to go harass law enforcement. We should not be doing that. We should also not be harassing the witnesses. We should not be doing that. We should be trying to be patient and use our critical thinking skills to do things that we can do to try to put pressure on these people so they can start telling the truth around here. Now, they've arrested, like I said, they've arrested 3 people in conjunction with this already. They've already arrested 3 people in conjunction with this. So this is a big deal. The other thing I want to point out about the investigation, while Lynn Fitch is talking all greasy, talking about she's going to arrest anybody doing this stuff to law enforcement, what about the people who were harassing Nolan Wells' mom? What about those people? Because Nolan Wells' mom is being harassed right now online through social media, people calling her phone, people sending threats to her home. I don't hear none of the Mississippi investigators talking about protecting Nolan Wells' family, and those are the victims, right? Isn't Nolan the victim in this case? So again, this is why I'm trying to let you know that the cover up is coming, because there's no way in the world that you out here trying to cape and cap for the witnesses and law enforcement talking about you want to arrest anybody harassing them, where you're actively allowing the victim's parents to be harassed and threatened, and you're not saying anything about arresting those people. So this case really has a lot going on with it. Let's get into this other clip real quick so we can talk about the throat, because this is important, family, and this is why you're about to hear why they didn't send the throat and the lungs to the private autopsier. Let's listen.
The throat. I know we have deep red markings on the occipital bone that's in the back of the, thank you. This is directly from the autopsy. We want you to see what the family has seen. Don't you think, Joe Scott Morgan, that the second medical examiner might need the throat to figure out what happened?
Let me tell you where the neck is. Or the organs of the neck, as it's referred to. These neck structures are actually being held by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. And they don't just arbitrarily hold things like this, Nancy. This is something that would commonly go with the body when the body is released. So I deduce the fact that they have seen something there that they're trying to hold on to from an evidentiary value. Remember, the state still has an ongoing investigation in this case, and they see evidentiary value in this. But the problem is that when you get into these structures in the neck, one of the things you're trying to assess is, was this a drowning? Also, is there any kind of trauma? If people will just put their hands right here in the midline of your neck, you'll feel that kind of cartilaginous body there. That's cartilage, right? That can be fractured. Need I remind you, Epstein, right? So you have to examine this. Also, here's our word, Nancy. They're talking about the hyoid is missing as well. So they don't have that. They've retained
Joe Scott Morgan, because you and I, hyoid, we know what it is because you and I have handled a ton of asphyxiation, ligature, manuals, strangulations, you name it. Hyoid, explain. So delicate.
Yes. Yeah, and it's very, very far up the neck, Nancy. And one of the things that happens is that with the hyoid, it's generally only traumatized as a result of direct pressure that's generally applied by a throttling event or a C-clamp like this, throttling meaning like this, so manual strangulation. And an outlier here is ligature strangulation, but primarily hands-on. So they're looking for little fractures in here all along the way. So that has to be dissected along with these other, there's a couple of other structures that you look at as well.
Where's the throat?
Okay, family. So those are the two things that I wanted to share from the Nancy Grace Instagram, because she is really on the case right now. So I'm glad that she is on it, because that means that hopefully we can get some answers. They may, of course, like I said, just prepare yourself, because you're not going to get the answers you want to get, but there's going to be answers. They're not going to be the ones you want to hear. So we just have to get prepared for that. And, you know, we just have to, I'm not even really sure what we have to do at this point. It's really frustrating that we can't get justice in this case. And, you know, like he said, they found evidence in that neck. That's why that wasn't sent to the private autopsy person. There's a reason they didn't send that, because they know what happened. They seen the evidence, and they're trying to figure out how they can cover all of this up. And really, that is my synopsis of it. I feel like that's why they're holding on to all this. They're trying to see how and when they can cover all of this up. So right now, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about really what's going on with that autopsy. We just heard him say that they can't do anything, that the private autopsy had an undetermined finding, but they did report that there were no fractures or no definitive deep tissue injuries. That does not mean that he didn't have any injuries. As you can see, he did have injuries to the back of the neck. He had some occipital bone injury. So that either he was gripped up like this, up against something where his head hit back something, or they gripped him up and he fell and hit his head on the back of the boat and maybe fell out and drowned. So that's my synopsis. You know, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, but that's what it sounds like happened. I mean, and it sounds like these kids were either drunk and maybe it was an accident and they was too scared to call 911. But I don't really buy that, but I don't know because, you know, thinking of myself, that's me and a group of my friends. If something happens to one of my friends, my immediate reaction is to call 911. It's my immediate reaction is to get them the quickest, best help that I can get them. I'm going to even say, is there a doctor here? You know, who can help my friend? So that's what you do when something happens to one of your friends. You don't just cover it up and do all this weird shit that they're doing. Now, why was the private autopsy limited? Because you just heard them. Because a few reasons. The first reason is because of decomposition. That body's been sitting since July 4th to July 22nd. Okay. So all of those days in between, that's a lot of time for the body to decompose, and they're not filling it with anything because it's still actively being worked on and investigated. The body not being examined immediately. Now, if I was the family, I probably would be adamant that we need to hire an outside investigator that needs to walk next to the state person. Because I don't trust those people in Mississippi. They have been down there covering up shit like this for God knows how long. So, you know, I would not have trusted them with this. I know it's a state investigation, so there may be some things that they can't do alongside of them or whatever, but I would have tried to get as immediate as possible. I think July 22nd is way too long to wait to get a private autopsy, but that's just my opinion. Also, another reason it's limited is because the organ and the neck structures weren't sent. We just seen a full breakdown of an expert talking about that and talking about why it wouldn't be sent, why they would hold on to it, and some of the technical things around some of the specific missing pieces, right? Also, the private pathologist did not do a toxicology report, so we're going to have to rely on the state's toxicology report. So hopefully they're not over there doctoring and manufacturing that report too much, right? So the unanswered questions that we still need to know is, what was the cause and manner of death? What was the cause and manner of death that the state determined? What does the toxicology report from the state say? What evidence supports or contradicts a drowning? And what was preserved for the independent review? Now, we already know from this that wasn't much preserved from this independent review, because they didn't send the neck. So what could they have preserved from this? Okay. So this is a big problem. So we have to really make sure that we're continuing to shed light on this and talk about these things so these people don't get away with this. Okay. We don't want them to get away with this. Even though it looks like they might be getting away with it, we can still have public opinion and we can still continue to talk about the story. So now let's get on to our reparations watch, family. So we have a reparations story coming out of New York. Now, the mayor there, I always get his name wrong, so I'm going to try to say his name right. Before I talk about the mayor, New York State Commission on Reparations and Remedies is having a business meeting on August 14th in Rochester and New Rochelle, New York, from 3 to 5 p.m. So if you are a New Yorker and you're in the New York area, the New York area, the New Rochelle area, or the Rochester, New York area, from 3 to 5 on August 14th, there's going to be a reparations committee meeting. All the foundational Black Americans need to be there. I know a couple that may be there, so I'm hoping that the family can make it out to that, because these commissions are what they're going to be using in their study, right? Even though we know we don't need a study, but let them play their game, right? This is the game that they play. If you want to be in the game, you got to play the game a little bit. So we'll do these studies, and all the people need to really come forward. But the main important point that I want us to make sure that we are pointing out, and I know this is not an issue on the grassroots level. The grassroots family is very familiar with this. This cannot be about racial inequity. It's not about racial inequity, family. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with racial inequity. This is a lineage-based claim, okay? Reparations, in order to have reparations and qualify for it, there's things that have to be there. It has to be present. Reparations must identify the injured group, the government responsible, the documented injury, and the descendants legally entitled to the repair. So we have all that if we speak the right way and we keep the right language. Lineage-based, okay, this is lineage-based, connected to chattel slavery, connecting to the 1870 census, okay, and also the U.S. government, and the documented injury is chattel slavery and the policies that ensued that kept us from being able to build wealth. So all of that's there, but we just have to keep the language clean. So if you are going to go, make sure that you are saying lineage based. It's nothing about race, nothing like that. Okay. So this is what we have to do if we want our eligibility to be, considered. If we want our eligibility for the reparation to be considered, we must come at this from a lineage-based perspective. Okay. Again, this is going to be taking place on August 14th, and that meeting is confirmed. So make sure you're in the building. And now at the city level, the mayor in New York, that's Zohran Mamdani, he previously signed a pledge to advance reparations policies, and his administration has allocated funding for community discussions, which is what they're having this day. So the stuff that he signed for the funding community discussion taking place on August 14th is where we see that represented. Okay. Now, I have a special story to get into for the Black Business Spotlight. So first, let me share my screen. And this is how I'm going to do the Black Business Spotlight. So for tonight's Black Business Spotlight, we are highlighting the Wrights to Barbershop at 7701 Temple Road in Philadelphia. This is a very special spotlight for me tonight because my brother is one of the head barbers that works there. And there was a company or a podcast platform called Digital Solutions Philadelphia that interviewed my brother for their spotlight. All right, family. So that is it. That's all we have for you tonight. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Before I get out of here, I do want to say happy Black August to the family. We know that for our family, for the Black American community, Black August is very important to us. This is a time where we do a lot of our freedom fighting. This is a time where a lot has happened, and Black August actually dates back to August 21st, 1971, and it deals with a brother named George Jackson and his brother Jonathan Jackson. George Jackson was killed at San Quentin prison, and he was a revolutionary writer. He was an organizer in prison, and he also authored the Soledad Brother, and that is a collection of letters that exposes racism, brutality, and political repression inside of American prisons. He was also one of the Soledad Brothers, which is 3 Black prisoners who were charged following the death of a correctional officer at Soledad Prison. So on August 21st, 1971, George Jackson was shot and killed by a tower guard at San Quentin State Prison. The prison officials described the incident as an attempted escape following a violent takeover inside the adjustment center. Jackson's supporters, however, and many of the prison activists rejected that account and characterized his death as an assassination. His death became a rallying point for the prisoners' rights and Black liberation movements. So this is where we get the term Black August from. So the following day, on August 22nd, 1971, hundreds of incarcerated men at Attica Prison in New York entered the dining hall wearing Black armbands that they sat silently and they refused to eat in a coordinated hunger strike to honor George Jackson. The Black armband represents mourning for George Jackson. It represents a unity among incarcerated men. It represents solidarity with political prisoners, and it represents resistance to racism and inhumane prison conditions. So that is how Black August got started. If you want to know more about Black August, you can go search that name, George Jackson, and it'll give you the whole story, and you can read everything you want to read about it. And I'll probably actually be doing some stuff on this show for the rest of August. We'll be talking about Black August and some of the events that happened in Black August. And yeah, this is our Freedom Fighting Month, family. August is the 8th month. 8 deals with the material and the spiritual world. It is the divide between the two. It is the war between the two. So this is a very spiritual month for us. You know, also this being a 9 universal month, this month is a time where things are coming to a culmination period. The 9 represents brotherhood, unity. It represents organization and inspiring and motivating and organizing the collective for a spiritual purpose. Okay. That is why this is a very important month for us. So if you don't do anything else this month, get in tune with some of the freedom fighting and some of the Black American history, because our history is very rich and we have a very rich culture, as you all should know. And if not, you can just subscribe here on BTV, where I'm going to be dropping educational shorts all month long in honor of Black August and in honor of George Jackson and all the political prisoners and all of the freedom fighting that our foundational Black Americans have done to ensure that we have a safe place on this land and to ensure that every other person that is melanated has a safe place on this land, because the work that we did is the reason that you guys have a safe place on this land. It's the reason why there were laws enacted in order for you to come here. So if you don't know about that, you need to know. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to say peace, love, justice, and accountability to the family. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 9 p.m. on Justice on Earth Weekly. Peace.
Queens up in your hood.